Hi there once again, it's Ricky from Moshville Times. I'm delighted to be welcomed by Elliot Alderman Broom. He's the guitarist for such bands as Canassus, as well as a host of other bands, and he also does his own solo projects in like Digital Prime, for example. But the reason I wanted to contact him, amongst other things, was he works for a music management company, Enzo Music Management. So I wanted to find out about that side of the business. So before we start, Elliot, how are you? Have you been? How have things been through the lockdown? Are you still working on things?
Yeah, I'm very good, thank you. Thanks for the introduction as well. Yeah, it's been really busy to be honest, and it's been more busy probably than it was before lockdown, which is a great thing, and that's primarily because a lot of bands we work with are really determined to push through this and continue releasing material and use it to the best of their abilities. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's been challenging, definitely, but it's been exciting. It's been fun.
So is Enzo something that you do full time, or do you have like
It
a
is, yeah.
full time? Yeah. So I take it you've had to adapt. Then you've had to use the technology to its fullest.
Yeah, definitely, and especially my daughter's quite young, and normally my mum would help with childcare and stuff like that, whilst working and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Obviously, we couldn't do that for quite some time. So with a 1-year-old running around and trying to work and run a business, it's been pretty challenging.
Yeah, it's good that you've kept it all together, mate. Thank you for that. So with the lockdown, then we'll talk a wee bit about music first. Have you been using this time constructively, written more songs for your bands or your own solo projects?
So not as much as I'd like on the personal stuff, purely just because of what I was just saying with the work and the bands, but yeah, more recently, now that things are a little bit more flexible, we started writing some new stuff for Kinesis again. And we had a lot of plans for Kinesis, before lockdown happened. We'd just come out of the studio actually as lockdown happened.
Yeah.
So we're slowly starting to adjust the plans and figure out what we're going to be doing at the beginning of next year now.
Yeah.
So not as much personal stuff as I would have liked, especially with Digital Prime as well. The idea of that was around, songs that I had for my old band Cambion, and just ideas that I have floating around on hard drives, as a way to sort of put those together into something.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's sadly not had enough time, but hopefully soon I will get back onto that.
Yeah. So with Canassus then, were you looking at doing like an EP, or was it actually going to be a full length, or?
So yeah, it's an EP. When I joined the band, I can't remember how long ago now, over a year ago, I think now. The drummer Noah joined at the same time officially.
Yeah.
So we just started working on new material straight away. We got an EP together, and obviously the plan was to record that as quickly as we could. Get in with a producer. We recorded with Justin Hill, and put that out with some videos and stuff like that. And of course, as soon as we came out of the studio, it was literally straight from the studio, straight home, and then locked in basically for the following months until now. So yeah, sadly we haven't been able to do anything. But yeah, it's a 5-track EP, all brand new songs, no re-release stuff. We're planning to do a couple of singles for that, and hopefully we'll be able to get those booked in and put those out as soon as possible.
Yeah. So up here in Scotland, we seem to be like a few weeks behind you guys in England. So has there been any scope of you actually meeting up or anything, or how do you communicate your ideas with each other?
Yeah, so like most people, social media, phone calls, WhatsApp, things like that. We talk quite a lot on there, but luckily, the guitarist Marcus, he actually owns a studio in Bridgewater, just up the road from where I live.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like Kinesis HQ, if you like. It's quite a well-kitted studio, lots and lots of space. It's a really big control room, bigger than any room I have in my house actually. So we're really fortunate with that we can still get into a room and write music and maintain a safe distance and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
And it's quite easy for us to do that. Unlike I know a lot of bands obviously that rehearse in small rehearsal spaces, or sometimes maybe in their houses aren't able to do that at the moment. So we're just really fortunate we've got that space that we can go to, and we could even be in separate rooms if we need to be, stuff like that. So for us, once things started to ease up a little bit, and you could go out and restaurants were opening and things like that, then we were able to go back to some semblance of normality in that sense. Obviously not quite, and we're not doing it as often as we normally would and all the rest, but it's been okay. I said we just started getting back into the swing of things now and trying to make plans and write some new material whilst we got the chance.
So you must actually be trying to remember who the actual band members are. You're like, who are you again?
Well, yeah, especially with our vocalist, he lives a fair distance away, and he, was a higher risk for all this, so he literally was shut indoors this entire time. And our drummer has moved further away again now. He's actually up close to you, believe it or not. So he'll be flying down for like rehearsals and stuff like that. So it's just been a shake up, but like anything, you make the best of it and figure out ways around it.
Yeah. I mean, I had an interview with a band from Aberdeen, and they still haven't been able to get together since March, So,
yeah,
as you say, you're quite fortunate, So,
hey, yeah, definitely.
So, going on to a wee bit about Enzo then. So, can you tell our readers at Moshville Times a bit about yourself and how you came to work for Enzo Music Management?
Yeah, so it's quite a fun story. So I started playing music and like actively gigging in a band at quite a young age. I was about 13 years old playing my first shows. I did sort of my first tour around 14, 15 years old. So it was a really early start. And because I was that age, I think like most, kids in bands at that age is my mum stepped in to be able to, like speak to pubs and clubs and sort out shows and things like that. And we were just far too young to be negotiating with a bar manager and had no idea what to say, So she jumped into that role, and she was really, really, she was off work as well for an injury at that point. So she had quite a bit of time to help us with that. And she was just really determined. And she's got just an overabundance of energy and charisma that most people wouldn't, just can't do. So she started making her name for herself, as much as she was helping the band. Fast forward a few years and playing some bigger tours and shows and things like that. Started having bands approach us and approach her for management, essentially, to do what she was doing for us. And that slowly turned into, a thing. We were getting busier and busier. And to a degree, obviously, the workload increased for her because the band was getting busier, but also the band started to just self-manage. We were getting more opportunities come to us as opposed to us having to reach out for them and things like that. So she had a lot more time and was able to take on a few bands and run that as a small business.
Yeah.
And it was around that time, I initially helped setting things up and naming the business and the branding side of it. And that just evolved over the years. I started doing more and more bits like that. And then as I got older, I was self-employed working anyway.
Yeah.
And just decided, when I decided to leave that band, that I just wanted to go into it full time, and stay in music. And of course, because she was managing us, a lot of the contacts were the same. I knew the same people, I'd met them at the shows and all that kind of thing. So it was kind of a natural progression, and it wasn't something we ever planned. It was just, she started managing my band, things got bigger, we started getting requests, and it was just like, okay, yeah, we'll take this, we'll do that. And here we are now. So it's really just been a natural thing. We certainly didn't force it or deliberately try to kick it off from the ground. It just kind of went that way naturally.
Yeah. So being 14 or 15, that must have just been a couple of years ago. Yeah. So how did you deal with age and seeing all these people and things like that? Was it pretty daunting at that age, or were you just just full of adrenaline?
Well, I to a degree I still do, but I used to have horrendous stage fright, really, really badly, to the point where the first few proper shows that we played, supporting actual touring bands and things, I was in, hysterics out in the car park, just like, I can't do it. And, I like a lot of people have anxiety and depression that I deal with. And that was definitely very, very difficult to overcome to play shows, definitely. But, like most things, I think it was just experience and repetition just gradually became easier. And then I started to realize that although I would be anxious in a lot of social situations, with large groups and things, that gigs became like a safe space, and it was familiar ground. Everyone's on the same page and felt the same way about music. So it just became like going home when I was going to a show, which made things a lot easier.
Yeah. Now you're just trying to get back at gigging again, but hey ho.
Yeah.
So for bands, So for bands that are unaware of what Enzo Music Management can do for them, what services could you provide up and coming bands as well as more seasoned bands?
Sure, yeah. So we obviously do work with a lot of up and coming bands, but we also do work with some bigger bands. So I mean, first and foremost, it's management, and management can be a very, very broad spectrum of things
Yeah.
that we do for that. We do booking, event booking and stuff like that, and PR services. But the booking and PR services are primarily part and parcel with the management. Bands that we take on for management, the booking and PR are things that we do for them.
Yeah.
We have been looking at expanding things to be able to offer the booking and the PR as separate services on their own right. But at the moment, we just can't do that. And yeah, like I said, the management is a very broad spectrum of things. Sometimes it ranges, with a more established band, it can be more, strategy, planning ahead, budgeting, contracts, negotiations, that kind of stuff. For more up and coming bands, a lot of the time it's focusing on like branding and image, marketing, again, scheduling, even sometimes songwriting. It really is just a broad range of things. And I think actually, this was a conversation I was having with somebody the other day, actually, I think much to the fault of maybe companies like us and a lot of other companies advertising for upcoming bands as management. I think it often gets misunderstood.
Okay.
Because I think a better way of describing it is management services, or sometimes even label services. I think that gives a better idea, as to what that job entails. But yeah, a lot of the time it's just development. It's working on looking at where the weak points might be, maybe some social pages, or the posting, the branding, the imaging. Maybe it's the live show, whatever that might be. Is developing that with the bands, and then obviously using our contacts and our experience to try and get their name in front of the right people, or if a record deal is on the cards, then negotiating that with them and trying to get them the best deal. And it's really just another pair of hands doing the admin stuff as well, because I think a lot of bands get caught up on the social media stuff and the business aspects of being in a band.
Yeah.
And can sometimes forget that the reason you start a band is to be creative and to write the music. And I think that's also something that we can offer is taking a lot of that stuff away from them, just to focus on the music again. And a lot of bands find that quite a relief, when they can just focus on the music and know that someone else is watching their back on the other side of things.
Yeah. Well, for any bands that are watching, give Elliot a wee phone, he'll deal with it all for you. So obviously you're dealing with a lot of bands then, so for catering for different genres of music, does this bring its own headaches when it comes to like promoting and marketing gigs, for example?
I mean, yes and no, I guess, because I mean, as far as booking shows, promoting shows, it's much the same process, I guess, whether it's rock, metal, pop, indie, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
We still negotiate with the promoters, booking agents, the bands themselves, whoever it might be. So the process of setting up the events and stuff, I guess, isn't really that different between genres, but certainly the promotion and marketing of it can be, and that's, I think, again, an area where some bands need some advice, and that's not necessarily something we would do offhand. Sometimes we reach out to partners that we work with and stuff for that, because obviously marketing a metal band is going to have a very different demographic to like a pop band or something. The audience is going to be vastly different, and you would market that in a slightly different way.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think the process is much the same across the board. You tailor it to the people that you're dealing with, and the people that you speak to.
Yeah. So it sounds as if you're a very busy man then. So how much of your time is actually taken up with Enzo then?
Pretty much all of it. Yeah. Pretty much the first thing I do when I wake up is check my phone, answer emails, go through messages on Facebook or whatever, and then it's usually, depending on the day, dropping my daughter to nursery or giving her breakfast or something, and then it's work. And then I finish the day, we put her to bed, and I continue to work. So it is pretty much 24/7. But it's fine, because when we were gigging back in bands and that, it was much the same thing. You wake up in the morning, you get in a van, you drive to the gig, and a lot of that is enjoyable. But when you think about it, it's also, if you think about it as a job, you're on the clock the moment you wake up and you get in that van. You're driving to work, you get there, you load in, you're representing your company essentially, and it's much the same process as it was in a band. It's just I get to stay at home now and drink lots of tea. So.
I actually get some sleep.
Well, not so much recently, unfortunately, but we can hope.
Yeah. So if you were to give advice for someone expressing an interest in becoming involved in band management, what would it be?
I would say probably get out there and meet people first. So if someone came out of school or college or maybe even university and wanted to go into this, if they haven't really been on the music scene, whether that's being in a band or maybe a photographer or just selling merch for one of your friends' bands or something like that, and just being able to go and meet people, I would say that's probably the first thing, is just meet people, be friendly, don't be an asshole, basically. And just meet people, make friends, make contacts, and don't go into those situations expecting something from them straight away. I think sometimes it is hard sometimes starting out, and I still have this. Sometimes when I meet new contacts or I'm making a relationship with someone new, is obviously at the end of the day you do want something from them. If they're a booking agent or a label, you want to be able to work with them, but don't go into the conversation straight away saying, can you do this for me? Just have a casual conversation with them and try to offer them something in return as well whenever you can. I would say that's the most important thing first, and then if you decide to go into management, I would say just be clear on what the job is and what bands are going to expect from you. And I think that's the other thing you get from being in a band or going out with bands, is knowing what sort of things bands want, what sort of things bands need help with. And just it gives you a bit of empathy towards bands, their situations and things like that. And a band is not an easy thing, just on a relationship level. Dealing with multiple personalities and things like that can be difficult. So it's not something I would jump into, straight away. But then having said that, the only way to learn really is to just go for it. So I would say just be realistic about it and make relationships and just be a nice person.
Yeah. Well, it sounds as if you're certainly that. So it's going to be a bit of a tricky question, but would you say you've got the proudest moment of your management career so far? Is that easy enough to answer?
I mean, yeah, there are obvious moments, but to be honest, my proudest moments, it's quite funny. We've spoken about this briefly before, but not so much now. But my mum used to work with me, in an office at home here. And we've got this is really stupid, I'm sorry. It's a little bit off topic, but it's hilarious. We've got this little horn, like a classic old fashioned bike horn.
Right.
And just every time something good happens, if we're really trying to book in a weekender, like a tour or something like that, and every time we smash it, the horn goes off. It's like the horn of success, And to be honest, it's a little bit cheesy, but my proudest moments are speaking to the other people that work with us, and when something pans out, maybe it's something we've been working on for 6 months to a year, and something finally comes through. That's my proudest moments. It doesn't have to be, the biggest achievement. Sometimes it could be the smallest thing, but when it's something you've worked so long on and there's lots of people involved in that project, when that finally comes through, that's the best feeling. It's like spending a year writing a song or an album and it coming out and being received really well. It's finally that's the payoff at the end. So yeah, to be honest, there's lots and lots of proud moments, and it is when our team is working on something that comes through. I just think that's a really proud moment for us.
Yeah. I mean, it must be a proud moment as well, in these tough times, actually keeping your roster, if not expanding on the roster with Enzo, keeping all the bands. It must be extremely tough.
Yeah, it is. And definitely at the start of this, there was a lot of conversations with the bands, especially when some bands, obviously their work has stayed the same. Some bands, they've got more work, and subsequently, more finances to put into marketing things or go into a studio or buying, live streaming equipment like webcams and things. But other bands, obviously they lost their jobs, and it all kind of stopped. And there's obviously discussions that had to be had there about how we manage that and what we can try and do in the meantime. And for some bands, it just wasn't possible to be able to continue to work on new stuff. And they had to take some time out. But again, with some other bands, the workload increased. So it was just a bit of a balancing act, figuring out who needs what, when, and what we can do to try and help them, and do what we can. So I wouldn't say, well, I would say that there's been some difficult points during that, but it's just one of those things. I try to look at the upside of this whole situation as much as possible, and I think one of the upsides of this is it's forced businesses like us and bands to just innovate and try and do things differently, but try and stay relevant and just find new ways to connect. And I find it really cool that that's led to a lot of bands diving into like live streaming and just trying to connect with fans, whether it's just comment sections or in like live stream videos and stuff. I think that's only a good thing, and that's something maybe the industry needed a bit more of before this happened anyway. So as much as this sucks and, venues are closing and who knows what it means for the industry long term, I do think when we come out of it, we'll be all the better for it. And there will be, evolutions in the way people connect with bands. I think that's only a good thing.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Thank you very much for that, Elliot. So how does it feel when you get a band to sign the dotted line and they join the Enzo roster? How does that make you feel after maybe negotiations or?
Yeah, well, usually by that point, we've been talking to them for quite a while. It's very, very rare that in fact, I would say almost never that we speak to a band and that contract is pulled out quickly. That it's very, very rare that happens. For a number of reasons. One, we wouldn't want to do that, but two, there's a lot you need to know. I think bands have a lot of questions, rightfully, and also we need to get a feeling not just for what they need, and what we can do for them, but also we need to get a feeling of their personality and what are their goals long term, because not every band's goal is to get a record deal and be the next biggest thing. Some bands just want to raise the bar a little bit. Some bands are too busy to be doing it as a full-time career. So we have to have conversations about what they need and what they want, what their goals are, and whether we think that's achievable. Sometimes it's a case of like reining it back in a little bit. If it's a relatively unknown band, they're like, we want to sign to a major label in 6 months. It's like, it doesn't really happen. So there's just a lot of negotiations and getting to know one another, and we try to have as many conversations to be as open as we possibly can to questions, and and we invite bands to just literally ask everything, ask anything, no matter how silly. We'll do our best to answer it always, because otherwise you end up getting into working with someone and it just doesn't pan out, or it's not what people expected, and we've had to learn that over the years as well. How we manage that situation, and how we negotiate with bands, and the things that we need to make sure are discussed before bands sign. That just took time to figure that out. So, and also, like, we don't so much have contracts. They are contracts. We do have an agreement and things that are written up, but it's not like a 30-page document with every legal matter covered. It's a fairly basic agreement that just outlines the rules and what we expect from the bands, and what bands can expect from us as well. And it's just a mutual agreement, and we sign that. And that's kind of the very last thing that we do. By that point, essentially we're already working together at that point, and then it's just a case of sending files back and forth. But yeah, so it's kind of weird, because it's obviously a good feeling when that's done and dusted and when the band's on board finally. But by that point, like I said, we've probably been talking for several months, at least. So yeah, it's a bit of a strange situation.
So it's just like what you were saying earlier then, it's like constant friendly communication. And that's what...
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, communication's king in anything. I don't think that's obviously not just for music, but for any line of work, especially for us. And it can be really, really difficult. Obviously, if you've got a number of bands and there's 5-6 members per band, that's a lot of people that could be, sending messages back and forth, and you have to try and stay on top of that and make sure they're happy and everything else. So it's quite a task, but it's also really enjoyable, because everyone comes from different backgrounds and has different tastes in music and stuff. And I think there's always something to learn from people. So that's probably one of the best parts of the job, to be honest.
Yeah, thank you once again for that, Elliot. So we talked about you're actively involved in Canassus, and you've got your own solo project, Digital Prime. Are you involved in any other bands actively at the moment?
Yes. Well, yeah. So I'm in another band called Codex Alimentarius.
It's never going
And
to say that. I was always going to leave you to say that.
you deliberately left that one out, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we've been quite quiet for a while, but deliberately as well. But we do have a full album recorded now that's been sat there for a little while, and we were just getting back into rehearsing and planning some shows again, you know, when lockdown sort of stopped everything. So yeah, we're hoping to have that out pretty soon. But again, with lockdown, we thought perhaps we'd have more time to sort of finalize the album stuff. But of course, like for some of us, the work's just increased, so we haven't had as much time as we thought. But I said we've got an album there, and I really strongly feel that it's a really good album as well. So if nothing else, we will be putting out that album, whether or not, you know, we continue playing shows or not, who knows. But yeah, we feel like we've got a really strong album there, so that will be coming out hopefully sometime next year. And we've got the EP for Kinesis and a bunch of new songs for Digital Prime that when I eventually find the time, I will get round to releasing.
Well, that actually leads on to my next question then. When you actually pick up the guitar and write a few riffs, how do you know which band that you're writing the riff for?
Like, I mean, I usually write with a specific, you know, project in mind, usually, but not always. Like if I go to the studio, the Kinesis studio, and you know we're saying, right, we want to write a new EP, then of course everything I write, I'm going to try to tailor to that project.
Yeah.
But you know, if I'm at home and I'm just writing to write, then it could be whatever comes out. You know, sometimes I'll just start writing. Sometimes it's cheesy power metal. Sometimes it's, you know, death metal. Sometimes it's like the techie stuff, and it's really just whatever comes out at that point. But I do quite like, and I find it enjoyable to sit down with a project in mind and specifically write with a goal, because I think that just makes it easier for me to, you know, rather than write a bunch of stuff and then chuck a load of it away and put whatever's left into the song. I like to sort of write a riff, and if I don't feel like it fits that project or that song, then I'll sort of put it over there somewhere, you know, and then write another part for that song. And I kind of work on section by section until I'm happy with that section and move on. And I'm perhaps the worst for sort of procrastinating or obsessing, I should say, on singular parts of just like going for it until it's right, and everyone else is kind of saying, just move on, we'll come back to it. And I'm like, no, I need to get this part right, you know. I'm terrible for like obsessing on minor things like that, but that's just kind of how my head works, you know. If I'm in that mode for that project, then everything else I write kind of gets pushed out the way, and I don't think about that for the time being.
So so do you record things when you're at home?
Yeah, so I've got, you know, a little recording setup at home as well. Most of my stuff is now at the studio, but I've got something, you know, simple here.
Yeah.
And I just, yeah, when I'm here, I just, you know, it's very quick demos and things. I don't bother tracking all the parts. But when we're at the studio, we tend to do like all the guitars and bass and start on some like backing layers and all that kind of stuff all in one go, as quickly as we can, just so that it's got context, you know, because we'll come away from something feeling like, okay, it's this really dark, moody riff and it's going to have this over it. And the next time you come back, maybe I'm just in a happier mood and it feels like it should be much lighter, you know? So it's like when I write something, I very quickly try to get context onto that, just to sort of like preserve that moment or that thought in that sound, you know, so that it's easy to come back to. Otherwise, I put down guitar riffs and I've got, I mean, Digital Prime is the example. I've got hard drives and hard drives of just riffs, and it's like singular riffs in unknown folders and things like that, you know. It's just impossible really to do anything with now. So it's really important to try and get context, I think.
So maybe you need to organise your diary a wee bit better.
Yeah, perhaps I do.
So I'm probably showing my age a wee bit here, but before the internet, magazines and fanzines were the places to find out about new bands and trends. Now publications are being replaced with thousands of websites catering for all genres. So do you think that some of the passion has maybe been lost, or do you think that the internet has been a good thing for music?
Again, I think the answer is yes and no. I think with physical printed publications, there's definitely a charm to that, same as there is with vinyl, you know, and cassette tapes and CDs and all of that. It's always going to have a place. It's always going to have a charm to it, being able to hold it, and you've got the glossy paper and the smell of the new magazine, just all of that. But at the same time, you know, I'm not adverse to this the digital movement of things, because I think at the end of the day, it reaches more people, and again, I think that's only a good thing. So I think certainly for the bands and probably for the magazines as well, for on a big part, reaching more people and being able to sell maybe digital versions of the magazine and stuff, they're probably better off than they were purely being a physical, magazine or something. So
yeah,
I would say, that's welcomed, and I think that's only a good thing for bands to reach more people. And it also opens up to being able, magazines are featuring like music videos and things now, which obviously they couldn't do in a physical magazine,
yeah,
and they host it on their site and stuff. So that, that's amazing. But of course, like anything, what the internet opens it up to is criticism and trolls, and just stupid people. So there's negatives to all of it, But again, I think the digital thing, I think it's only a good thing. Yes, there are illegal downloads now, and we've got all this like weird culture of online, but it's also been really positive, and I think the music industry was saved by it. And there's a lot of conversations, obviously, about Spotify, which we won't go into, but I do think if it wasn't for companies like that, no matter how bad they might be perceived, as the music industry would have died, a long time ago with the Napster era and things. Streaming really saved it. So I, for one, am thankful for the digital side of stuff and for things going digital. I think it opens up more possibilities, and look at the current situation. It's just innovating and evolving around the situation. So yeah, I think it's only a good thing, really.
yeah. I just had a couple of interviews last week with guys that I've known since like 1990 and 1991 and stuff like that, and they were all the tape trading days and just waiting for the postman coming through the door, see what demos you were going to get, £1
Yeah,
for a demo and stuff like that, send a blank and all the rest of it. Those were the days. But yeah, I see what you're saying
yeah,
though. Sometimes it just means that the market's a wee bit oversaturated, but trends
yeah,
go, don't they? So
yeah. I said you do lose some of that charm. 100%. You really do. Like if CDs and vinyl and tape disappeared and it was purely digital, it'd be a very, very cold industry, I think. But that's why I think they will always have a place, and they will always make returns every now and then. Vinyl has become quite popular, but who knows? In a few years it might be something else. So yeah, I just think it's a case of just changing with the times and just trying to stay relevant and evolve around it, but at the same time still keeping a spot for the real physical stuff, because we don't want it to be 100% digital. I think that would be a real shame.
yeah. So back to Enzo for a wee bit. I've just got a couple of questions left. So I have to ask if there was a band that you were desperate to sign for Enzo but got away from you. But I think you answered that earlier. Nobody really has, have they?
Well, if I was to rephrase that slightly differently, there's definitely bands that I'd love to work with and I'd love to sign, who are either already with other companies or I don't know what the reason might be, but yeah, there's bands right now I'd love to work with, which obviously I won't say, but um, there's also some bands that we've worked with and have split up, like just bands who happen to split up. And there's quite a few bands like that. Like I can name those as band I was working with called Malum Sky, and a band I was working with called Cadian, just as two examples.
Yeah.
Who are just absolutely fantastic bands. And I really think I should say, are really relevant and a really unique sound. And I think Cadian are actually doing some stuff again, maybe. I'm not sure. You'd have to look at that. But yeah, those are two bands that I was working with who I really thought had a very unique sound, and definitely potential to do more. Very, very driven members of that band, with some big goals. And unfortunately, things just didn't work out for them. And we sort of shook hands, and that was that. And they split up to do other things. But yeah, there's always bands I'd love to work with. I think every company would have that. There's always clients that they want to work with. There's always new ideas, and we've got ideas for the company of new areas that we want to move into. Again, it's a case of when we have the time to do so, we'll look at expanding certain areas. And we've partnered now with a company over in Florida called Maverick Music Group.
Okay.
And they're a great bunch of guys, very, very similar to us in work ethic and the way their company works. So we've expanded our team in that sense over there. We're still evolving things, but it's yeah. Going back to the band, sorry, it's there's always bands that we want to work with, and there's bands that we want to work with on other things other than management as well. but it's just finding the time to expand the company in that direction to make that happen.
Yeah. So turning it around a wee bit then, if bands want to join Enzo, what are the best doing? Getting in contact with you, sending you a couple of songs, what are the best doing?
Yeah, so I would say look at our website, but our website is going to be, well, it's still being rebuilt actually. It's been a long time in the works. We've had quite a few issues with it, but our website is being rebuilt. But so if you can't get onto the website, if you can't find what you're after there, if you go to our Facebook page and just have a look at the About section, there's some submission guidelines in there. And it's basically, we have a submission email that you can contact. And basically the things that we normally look for, normal things. If you have an EPK, that's great. Unreleased material, if you have demos for any new material that you're working on, links to social pages so that we can see what you're up to, any interesting reviews or facts about the band. Just the more information that you can give, the better. But I would say also try to condense it down. The more information, the better. But we don't want like an article, an essay full of information. So we just don't have time for that. And I will say as well, we do look at every submission that we get. But again, we've talked about just being busy and stuff, especially right now, is that we can't respond to everyone. So for anyone who does submit, don't feel disheartened if we don't get back to you at all. And sometimes, it's been 3 months later, we've got back in touch with the band, just been like, so sorry we haven't got back to you, just been really, really busy. And we've ended up working with the band, 3 months later. So if you don't hear from us right away, it's fine, but try to give as much information as possible, because far too many bands or artists in general will send an email that's just, hey, check out my band, and then like one link, and I'm not interested. That just goes straight in the bin if it's that. So just try, again, be honest, and don't blanket email every company. Just if you're sending us a message, just target the message to us and just be honest. Just be honest, say who you are. It doesn't matter if you have 50 likes or 50,000 likes on Facebook. It's more about the music, really. So and I think that goes for bands. If that's one bit of advice I could give as well, for any bands approaching labels or agents or anything, it's not all about the numbers. And a lot of labels will sign a band based on the music and based on the personality of a member or members of that band. So just don't obsess over the numbers. Numbers are important, sure, but don't obsess over them in an email. Let us know what the numbers are, but I'd much rather hear what kind of person you are and what the band's aiming for.
Thank you very much for that thoughtful answer there, Elliot. Thank you. I've only got one last question for you, and I've got a funny feeling it's going to be your favourite question. I see a lot of guitars. I see a lot of guitars behind you, so I'm going to have to ask you to talk about one or two of them. What's the one to your right hand side? I see that's a 7-string.
Sure, yeah. So that's the one I use in Kinesis most of the time. I don't remember the exact model, to be honest with you, which is really bad. But it's just like a basic Ibanez fan fret guitar. I got that one when I joined Kinesis because I didn't have a 7-string at the time.
Yeah. Is there a particular brand that you like?
What's that, sorry?
Is there a particular brand that you like?
More recently, just Ibanez, to be honest. I think as I've got older and had less and less time, I'm less bothered by specifics. It's more, is it comfortable to play? Does it do the job? Does it look cool? That's all I care about. And that's certainly what that did. I've got a thing for Ash guitars at the moment for some reason. This has like an Ash top on it. So it's just a fan-fetched 7-string Ibanez. It's really, really comfortable. I mean, the Ibanez Wizard 3 necks are renowned for being very, very comfortable and very, very quick. So that's nice. Over there's a few more guitars. The one, I don't know if you can see right in the corner there somewhere, is a custom guitar that was made for me to my specs by Double Slick Guitars when I was in Cambion. And I used that guitar for a long time, and I still do for the Digital Prime stuff or anything that's on a 6-string. And there's a few others there that are mainly just, bits and bobs, some basses, and a Les Paul and a Telecaster, so Stratocaster, I should say. Yeah, like I'm not fussy, to be honest, about guitars if they're comfortable to play. I don't obsess too much over pickups and stuff these days. I think way more of it is in the player and in the amp and the cab. I'm not too bothered if I've got £1,000 pickups or £5 pickups. Really.
So do you have a dream guitar?
Do I have a what? Sorry.
A dream guitar, a guitar that you would always love to have.
I have always wanted the Meshuggah signature 8 string, just purely because I love the look of that guitar. And I love the fact the bridge is sat really far to the back of the guitar. I mean, it's basically an 8 string bass at that point. You know, it's like surfboard length. But
Yeah.
I just think that's a wicked looking guitar. I
Yeah.
really do. I would love to have that, but it's way out of my price range. That's for sure.
Would you sell all those other guitars to get it?
I would and I wouldn't. I would in the sense that I would have that guitar over any of these guitars.
Yeah.
But a lot of the guitars that I own now are, you know, they have sentimental value.
Yeah.
A few of the guitars back there were given to me by, you know, family, or it's a limited edition, or like the custom was a one-off, so I would never get rid of that. So that would be a really tough choice. If someone said to me, "I'll give you this guitar if you give me those," I might have a mental breakdown and not know what to do.
Oh, listen, Elliot, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Could you remind us once again where we'll find Enzo Music Management on social media, please?
Yeah, so I mean, the best bet is to head over to our website, which is www.enzomgmt.com. You can find us on, you know, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Just search for Enzo Music Management, and we're right there. If you want to get in contact with us, you can email either submissions@enzomgmt.com or contact@enzomgmt.com. And again, yeah, for submissions, we have the guidelines on Facebook. So if people want to submit and need to know anything, you know, just have a look at that and send the stuff over. We're always happy to look at new music.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Elliot. It's like I said, it's been an absolute pleasure. Right.
Yeah, and you, mate. It's been brilliant.
Thank you.